Joel, the creative director of Dune Awakening, has done a post here giving us some information on two big changes that are coming to the game, or I guess two systems that are going to be tweaked in the game. Both the Deep Desert and the Landsraad, two of the big endgame activities, or I guess the actual endgame of the game. With the Deep Desert, we have the PvE-centric way of getting the best materials in the game, and the Landsraad is basically daily and weekly activities that give you motivation towards further unlocks and tiered merchant rewards and what have you. But in my typical fashion of giving you all the information in this video and upfronting the knowledge in it, let me just give you the down and dirty of what he's talking about in this entire post. He basically goes into talking about ending the supremacy of the Scout Ornithopter in the Deep Desert, because right now, as it is, the Ornithopters are just being heavily abused, a lot of rocket pods, a lot of just crashing into people and killing them. So there are a lot of changes they're going to be issuing with that. Now, in addition, the beginning of the Deep Desert, the kind of first intro area or sector, as it were, will become a PvE zone. So you can jump in if you're just trying to play solo, or if you're trying to do some light group play, small group play, and you don't really want to jump into the grander PvP portion of the game. They're going to allow people to do that so they can just simply jump in and have some fun. But then the actual Deep Desert, the portion that is really going to be the higher risk, high reward portion of the Deep Desert, will continue to be full PvP. Now, as far as the Landsraad's confirmed, they haven't given a ton of information, just that it does need to be tweaked. And before I even really get into that, I will say that I just from my anecdotal experience, you can definitely see that Atreides is winning hands down over everything. So they want to tweak the amount of, I guess, contribution you can make towards each and every card or placard or house, as it were, so that it's not just simply stockpile, then dump everything at the beginning of the week. But that's too long to watch this entire video. So if that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to go ahead and shut the video down. If you haven't even gotten into the end game, there's nothing really in this post that's going to be totally pertinent to you. It's just going to make the end game better when you do finally get to it. So that's, again, the too long didn't watch this entire video. You can simply jump ahead to any part that interests you the most. And if you are heading out, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe, as each one of those helps me out a ton. Also, you can find a link to my Twitch in the description and the pinned comment, so come on by and watch me stream this game and plenty of other ones here. Let's get started in how endgame is changing in Dune Awakening. We got this big old post. I've got a link below. You can just go ahead and click the link if you don't want to watch this whole entire video, right? It's just this information. I'm basically just reading it to you. If you've never watched any of my patch note videos or anything like that too, the way I do things too is just I highlight in green the big things they're going to be talking about. So basically, the way that Joel introduces this post is by talking about, hey, you know, we had an idea for what endgame would be like and so on and so forth, but, you know, that just doesn't really survive once the game goes live. People abuse systems, people activate systems or use systems in ways that they didn't quite expect. So this is kind of the result here. And that's the intro here, the kind of preamble. But the big portion of it is kind of talking about the theory, or at least their thought process to the Deep Desert. It was always kind of meant to be something that was focused on group and guild play as a means to reward people that wanted to play the game in that fashion. But they've realized too that by doing that, it does bar the people that don't play like that from tapping into the final portion of the game. And I guess too, it's like when you think of something like that, you know, the final portion of the game, I'm always down with having portions of the game set aside for people that really want to get hardcore into the progression of things, right? You think of progression rating in World of Warcraft, you think of like sweaty gameplay and a lot of other games. I'm always down to reward stuff like that. But I think when you have like tier 6 resources being essentially gated by a full PvP mechanic, which, I mean, I come from the world of Ultima Online, where, I mean, that's just getting punched in the nether regions repeatedly and going, this game's great. So full PvP is fine for me, but I understand that's not everyone's cup of tea. And I also understand too that when you have full PvP and you have a reward system that, hey, T6 resources, the only way to get those, you got to do this in Deep Desert and do this. It ultimately always boils down to, because of the way that the internet disseminates information nowadays, it jumps down to heavy min-maxing, people completely throwing things to the wall, where it's just like, hey, we're just going to choose the absolute best all the time. We're going to dumpster anyone who tries to put their face into this because we want to completely monopolize things. So they're trying to break that here by saying, starting soon, some areas of the Deep Desert will now be flagged as partial warfare PvE areas. That's the majority of the Haga Basin, where players will be able to explore testing stations and harvest T6 resources without the threat of conflict they may not want. It's important to note the top tier of the game is balanced around guilds and groups, so people will still find it grindy if they play solo. Landsraad control points, shipwrecks, and the largest spice fields within this region of the Deep Desert will remain War of Assassins. And if you've only played on the Haga Basin, going into any of the ruined ships are War of Assassins PvP flagged areas. So the deepest parts of the Deep Desert will remain as they currently are: high reward, high risk, high reward, high risk areas. Good lord. So that is still going to be maintained, but it's basically kind of just making it so the first initial sectors are PvE. And if you've not jumped into the Deep Desert, it's a series of sectors. It gets pretty crazy. Big breath there because I forgot to breathe. Now, one thing to note too is that PvP's balance right now is really beat up. It's just heavy on Ornithopter play, and they've always intended for the PvP to have a very split approach to both infantry, vehicle, and sky approach, kind of just having a whole range of things. Now, you can see right here, PvP has plenty of issues that need to be addressed. We're taking steps in that direction with our first changes to the Scout Ornithopters. Now, they also have said a lot of changes are coming in a very big patch coming in July, in the very beginning of July. So I don't know if this is outlining those changes coming in July, or these are changes that are coming, imminently. So just kind of take that sentence with a grain of salt. So Scout Ornithopters with rocket launchers attached will have their speed maneuverability reduced because they were just going way too fast. Rockets fired from Scout Ornithopters will have increased heat generation, reducing basically scout rocket spam. Thrusters will provide a max speed bonus regardless of wings, ensuring that thruster equipped scouts will be the fastest vehicles in the game. And the important portion behind this is this allows people to actually break away from combat, which we're going to get to in the next paragraph. And now a new T5 infantry rocket launcher will be added to help improve the dynamics of vehicle ground combat, allowing you to shoot these thopters out of the sky without having to invest in the resources that you readily get in the Deep Desert. So you can go into the Deep Desert having an answer to this. There are additional changes to mechanics like respawn timers, vehicle storage tools, hand scanners, and other mechanics that we see being abused in the Deep Desert. So if anything that's currently being abused, they at least acknowledge that it is being abused. So hopefully those changes will come with the changes they're talking about here. Now, you can see, so this portion here is basically talking about how the Deep Desert's PvP was always intended to be a situation where if you didn't want to commit to the fight, you could get out of the fight. They say right here, PvP should happen when both parties decide they want to fight over a location. And right now, as it is, you can, unless you really have great wings, not rings. That's not Lord of the Rings. Great wings and a good thruster, you're probably not going to be able to get away from people that are hunting you, and they'll chase you over many sectors to try to just slam you out of the sky. So what they're saying here is they want to keep that in mind here. So if you're smart and vigilant, you never have to fight if you don't want to. If you run, you'll have to call a halt to whatever task you were pursuing, which should always be a choice. And that's kind of why some of these changes are coming into play, where it's forcing, or it's allowing people to, hey, you know what? I got what I wanted to get. I want to get out of here. And that's what they were saying in a lot of the initial interviews in this game. They were saying that if you go into the Deep Desert and maybe you harvest, let's just say, the 200 units of spice, but you see a huge flotilla of a ton of these ornithopters coming your way, and you're solo, and that's the guild that controls this region. You can have the wherewithal to get out of there as long as you're, like I said, smart and vigilant. So they want to be able to reward those people that are kind of ratting and jumping in and grabbing these little things versus these big guild on guild fights or group on group fights. Going further down. Finally, the intended dynamic has always been combined arms. So that's a big thing here. So we're planning to make more changes to the Deep Desert to accommodate ground battles and reinforce the use of player builds. So that's the big thing here with the Deep Desert, and trying to reinforce and nerf ornithopters, but still maintain their speed, right? That's supposed to be the big thing for them, is that they are scout ornithopters. Right now, it doesn't make much sense to go with assault ornithopters because it costs so many resources. They're not even that much more durable compared to the scout brethren that can just be shot out of the air and be built in mass. You know what I mean? So you're not getting too good of a trade-off. So this is going to allow assault Ornithopters, hopefully to shine over their scout counterparts, and scouts can maintain their role as scout fast attack, or at least fast maneuvering Ornithopters. So we'll see how this all shakes out and see what this really, or when this all kicks in to kind of get a better feel for it. But now let's go into the Landsraad. So with the Landsraad, I think it's Landsraad. They say it like, they say it in the game, and I can't remember if it's Landsraad or Landsraad, because I've heard it now from watching the Dune movie, then now watching Dune Prophecy, and now playing the game. I'm all over the place. Either way, Landsraad here is supposed to be, Landsraad is supposed to be it's Landsraad. I remember this now. It's supposed to be a activity driver. And what an activity driver means is a daily or a weekly. If you've played Destiny, if you've played any major MMO of late, World of Warcraft obviously has these, but majority of MMOs now, or even Diablo has them, have any kind of daily and weekly activities that you can do to kind of just keep some sort of gameplay loop going. And that's the goal here. But the goal of this was always to create a sort of interaction and a politics for individual groups and for guilds to kind of cause a real live conflict between them. But they say here in this block that what we're experiencing with the Landsraad is very basic. They're saying a lot of let me acknowledge that as an activity driver, the activities it asks you to participate in are simplistic. A lot of item hand-ins and crafting requests. That's because the system is in the earliest launchable iteration. Landsraad is an umbrella for all endgame activities. What form do those endgame activities take? More dungeons with bosses that drop endgame loot, more contracts that require specific tasks to be undertaken, more specialized delivery tasks that include components that cannot be stockpiled. If we ever add raids to the game, there will be a task on the Landsraad to complete those raids. It is a framework that holds the endgame activities in place. So that's what they're saying with the Landsraad, is that there's Landsraad portion that pushes you to the Deep Desert, that pushes you to gather basic materials in Haga Basin, eventual dungeons with bosses, eventual specific tasks that will be undertaken. So right now it's at a very base level. And the Landsraad, I think, is a really cool system. I don't think a lot of people understand it because the game doesn't really force you to interact with it too much quite yet. Well, doesn't force you to interact with it unless you're in the end game, where that's part of it, right? But they're saying here that, the way people are approaching it right now is they're just stockpiling and then dumping and then pulling the little cards away from people so they cannot contribute to them. So that's a big flaw, right? We are addressing some key flaws in Landsraad design. The inability to hand in items after a square is completed, and the rapidity at which some squares are turned in. Stockpiling is currently rewarded, but that is not our intention for the system. We will make some changes to address that. Also, the Landsraad will be updated to provide micro rewards for solo and small group players, because they've said it is geared towards group and guild play in the sense that there should be a politics to it, but they also want people to be able to contribute from a solo and small group perspective. So this opens the door for them. Now, they haven't given a lot of information here, but they've said basically they want to change more things. And I think one of the biggest things that I noticed with this system is that it's Atreides. It's Atreides almost 80% of the time. 80-20 rule, I think, is pretty prevalent here. I've talked to a lot of other people on different sieges and different servers, and it's almost entirely Atreides in most of them. Very few have Harkonnen dominance. So there needs to be some sort of incentive or an underdog bonus for the underdog, or some sort of system that does encourage or reward. I mean, you can't swap between allegiances. So there needs to be something that incentivizes people to want to choose the underdog, even if that's hey, all underdogs have a 5% resource discount on crafting. It's like 75% is the one for like repair. So maybe it's like a 10% for all repair, something that gives them some sort of rotating bonus, so that people that are maybe in between, I don't really care, kind of like the way the Harkonnen buildings look and they're all their armor, but Atreides are cool in the movie. There needs to be something that incentivizes it. Now, they have said that there is a third faction coming that will play kind of an interplay between both the Harkonnen and the Atreides for those that want to sit in between the factions and benefit from both. So I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's going to be like a deserter faction, if that's going to be some sort of faction that is has allegiance to both. I'm not sure. And I'm sure that third faction or any additional factions they add will start to mix this system up. And I think too, a lot of it a lot of the, I guess, lack of explanation in this section, I think, comes from this sentence right here. A lot of that's because the system is in its early launchable iterations. We know we're getting more additions to stuff. We know that a lot of things are going to roll out and it's going to change the interplay with a lot of these systems. So I'm really wondering how much of this is just like, yeah, you've been given 5% of our intention behind this system, or hey, it's actually like 50% and here's a whole bunch more. So I'm very curious to see what this looks like in the future. They did say it's a big patch coming in July that will add some tweaks to the game and a good deal of quality of life things as well as balancing. I don't think there's any plan to add any content in that patch. They were saying that all major content is going to be coming as a free portion of the game. There's also DLC portions, and I don't know what the kind of, to use another word here, interplay is between those two things. If those that are Conan Exile veterans, you know how much free content they add as far as, hey, here's a major patch, here's magic, and here's this, and so on and so forth. So a lot of things coming with that, and I think it's just another thing that definitely needs to be worked on. But at that, it brings our video here to a close. We've covered the two major topics they talked about in this, right? Bear with us. Our intention is to be clear and open in communication and to make Dune Awakening a game that everybody can enjoy. And they also said too, you know, once a live game launches, it becomes a collaborative effort between the developers and the players to make it something amazing. We appreciate your feedback on what we hope is the beginning of a long journey together. I am thoroughly loving the game. I'm having it hard to put the game down. I just got back. My voice is shot to shit. I just got back from a Metallica concert, and like every moment up until the actual Metallica portion of the concert, I was like, "Go, get back on my Ornithopter and the aluminum, like crack whore." Like I'm addicted. But I think what excites me the most about Dune is that Dune has, if they said they're kind of on the fence about releasing an actual roadmap, and I agree. I think roadmaps are very dangerous because people marry themselves to roadmaps. But I think if you were to take a roadmap from an abstract perspective and say, hey, rather than talking concrete dates, rather than talking chronological improvements we want to make, here is a list of things that we would like to do, and these are the things we are actively developing towards. Versus, I think a lot of games release roadmaps that are like Q1, Q3, Q2, we want to do these things. And how did I learn to count from 1, 3, and 2? But still, my point remains that they do those style of roadmaps with content date and content expectations. And I think it is a trap because developers always need to pivot, right? They always need to kind of be able to react to what the community wants. Maybe they release their first item in roadmap and it's terrible and it needs a lot of work and it delays the further items in a roadmap. So I think release to us an idea of the things you want to play around with. Get an idea back from the feedback on that. Oh man, cool. You want to add a third faction? Yes, that's what we want. Or hey, you want to add another class? That's what we want. Something that gives you an idea as a developer what roadmap piece makes sense. And on my note though, before jumping into this tirade about this roadmap, I think the bones for this game are amazing. That if we don't have a roadmap, or if we have no roadmap coming, I would still be, I'm excited for the stuff in the future because I can see so much potential. Like, even if you go to the world map and press M, like in the portion in which you navigate between the each locale using the Ornithopter, you realize that we're in such a small part of the actual planet. So it's really exciting to see that there's so much potential that I gotta move that. So much potential that can be unlocked in this game. And I'm really excited for the future. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Do you think that these deep desert changes are the big things that we needed? Are there other things that you think that take precedent? As far as the Landsraad goes, do you think that we need a incentive system for people that are on servers that have drastic underdogs? Like I'm on Sandtide, on Siege Rommel, it's something like 8 Atreides guilds and then like 2 or 3 Harkonnen guilds on the Landsraad. And so there needs to be a system that gives to those to encourage that, or else people are going to see, well, that's a sinking ship over there, I'm never going to join them. Or they'll want to join Harkonnen and be actively discouraged because of what they see. So there has to, again, be something about that. But go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.